If God called me to write books, why isn't He blessing my sales? That's the question, isn't it? It's the one you've been carrying around for a while now. And it's the one you don't say out loud because it sounds like it borders on doubting God. And you don't want to be that Christian author, right? So you keep it buried. You keep writing and praying, waiting patiently for the number in your KDP dashboard to change. But that question still lingers in the back of your mind. It just sits there. And each low royalty report brings it back up. Friend, I've asked this question too, and I want to talk about it with you today. I'm not going to hand you 5 new marketing tactics at the end of this episode because you've done those tactics. You've probably done more of them than most Christian authors will ever try. That's not what you need today. What I want to do today is sit with you and share the way I've come to understand this question. Because it changed the way I not only see my entire author life, but also how I've come to understand God's heart more. And I think it may change something for you too today. So friend, if you've ever tried to make sense of this question and wondered why your book sales are low, even if you know God called you, find a quiet place to really tune into this conversation because I want you to walk away today with a weight lifted off your shoulders. This is the Anointed Scribe podcast. If you're a self-published Christian author who's ready for real growth in your relationship with God and in your author business, this is your home for growing your faith and building a profitable author business God's way. I'm Celia Teixeira, best-selling and indie Christian author, and I'd love to walk this journey with you. Come on in, friend. It's good to have you here. Hey, real quick before we start today's episode. If you've tried all the self-publishing tactics but still feel stuck and trapped in that place in your author life where you're too worn out to keep pushing and too committed to your calling to walk away, I've created a space where you can recalibrate and take the first 3 steps toward growing your author business the Revive to Thrive way. Visit anointedscribe.com/revive to thrive. Join me, friend. It's time to do this God's way. Hey, it's your author friend, Celia, and welcome back. If you're new here, I'm your host and founder of Anointed Scribe. I'm also a best-selling Christian fiction author with nearly 30 entirely self-published books to my name, and it's my absolute privilege to share biblical wisdom and practical lessons from my own author journey to help you deepen your relationship with God and build a profitable author business that makes a real kingdom impact. It's one of the most asked questions my students wrestled with before they joined my Revive to Thrive program. And actually, it's one that I've personally also tried to make sense of back when I was stuck myself. See, there was a time in my author life when I was doing everything the industry told me to do. And I mean everything. I bought Amazon and Facebook ads. I signed up for BookFunnel promos and author swaps to build my email list. I scraped together money for conferences and for BookBub feature deals, and I showed up on all the social media platforms. I had years of experience with the whole system. More than 10 books in my catalog at the time and full-time hours in the business. I put everything in. And yet my sales were still not nearly enough to support my author business, much less help feed my family. And honestly, I was at my wits' end. I did not know what else to try because I had already done everything they said I needed to do. And every time my numbers dropped short of what I'd hoped, that same question would rise up in me. If God called me to do this, and I knew He had, I knew that as clearly as I knew my own name, then why wasn't He blessing it? Why was He not blessing my business? Why was He not increasing my sales? I remember one particular day I took a morning walk through a leafy park in England where we lived at the time, and I was tired in a way that had nothing to do with my legs. And I was asking God this question, more begging than asking, over and over without getting any answer. What I felt was silence, which I read as absence, as God's absence. I thought maybe I'd heard God wrong from the beginning. Maybe I just got it all wrong. Maybe I'd built this whole author life on a call that wasn't actually there. You may have felt something like that too if you're still listening to this right now. I think a lot of Christian writers do, and no one talks about it. It's that numb space between giving up and hoping harder, where you're too worn out to keep pushing and too committed to your calling to walk away. So you sit there in the middle, working and praying and waiting, and God isn't saying anything. Friend, here's what I want to tell you today. I have come to see something about that silence, and it isn't what I thought it was that morning strolling between those tall leafy trees. It wasn't absence. It was something else. And once I understood what it was, the way I see my whole author life started to change. And that's what I want to share with you today. The first thing I had to see was the equation I'd been carrying around without even realizing it. The equation that went something like this. God called me to write. If God called me, then He wants me to succeed at it. If He wants me to succeed at it, then my books should sell. If my books aren't selling, then either He didn't call me or He has withdrawn His blessing, or I'm doing something wrong. That is the calculation that bled into my prayers for years. And I'll bet if you sit with it, you'll find something close to it running through your own mind. Here's the thing about this equation, though, and it blew my mind when I first came to realize it. It sounds Christian, and it uses Christian words, but it isn't from Scripture. It comes from the author industry. We have picked it up from there and folded it into our faith without checking. Here's how I know this to be true. Listen to what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 3 verse 6, which, by the way, is the cornerstone of my entire Anointed Scribe platform. Paul says this, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the growth. Isn't that beautiful? Paul is talking about the church. He and Apollos both did faithful work. Paul planting, Apollos watering, and God is the one who gave the growth. It's a beautiful verse, and most of us have heard it 100 times. But look at what it does not say. It does not say the growth God gave was the growth Paul was measuring or expected. It only says God gave the growth. Full stop. Friend, I think many of us, and I include myself here because I did it for years, have been reading that verse as though the growth God gives always shows up in the form we consider to be all that matters. We plant our books, we water our email list, we do our part, and we assume that if we have been faithful and we have been called, then the growth God is giving will show itself through our Amazon sales dashboard, right? But Paul never said that. He said God gives growth. He did not say God gives your specific version of growth on your specific timeline in a format your KDP dashboard can read. So now what? Where does this leave us? Because if God isn't growing your book sales, then what is God growing? Because He's always growing something, right? Here's where a second piece of scripture will bring more clarity to this. Colossians 2 verse 7 says, rooted and built up in Him, strengthened in the faith as you were taught, and overflowing with thankfulness. That is the heart verse Anointed Scribe is built on, and it names something most of us miss when we are staring at our royalty report and our bank accounts. It says you are rooted in Him, being built up, growing in strength and thankfulness. Notice where the growth in that verse happens. It's going downward into Him, into your roots. That is the different direction from the one your dashboard is observing and telling you to look at. And here is what I want you to hear today, because I wish someone had said this to me years ago. The silence you have been hearing from God about your sales may not be the silence at all. It may be the sound of rooting. It may be what God is growing right now, because God is growing something in you under the surface that has to grow first before anything above ground can grow next. You've been staring at your branches, waiting for the fruit, and He's been trying to work it out at your roots. God is not withholding a blessing from you here, friend. He is giving you a different blessing, one you are not measuring, one you don't even have to measure. And it may be the one you need most, because an author business built without deep roots breaks the moment the first hard season comes, and it will come. Those seasons come. And He loves you too much, friend. Trust me when I tell you this. He loves you too much to grow the fruit before He has secured your roots. He does not want your whole house of cards tumbling down. So the question I want you to sit with is a different one from the one you have been asking. Instead of asking, if God called me, why isn't He blessing my sales? Try asking this one instead. Try asking, God, what are you growing in me right now that I've been missing because my eyes have been focused on what's on my sales dashboard? Do you hear the difference? The first question keeps you stuck in that numb space, waiting for your metrics to move. The second one opens a real conversation with a God who has been answering you all along, but not in the language you were listening for. You might now find that this episode has brought a few things to the surface for you, and you're sitting there wondering how to course correct, because it's all just too overwhelming and you have no idea where to start, right? So I want to say that just sitting with this will do nothing for you in the end. And you'll still be in that numb space I mentioned at the start of this conversation next month, next year. My goal is to get you moving forward, to get you to that fruit-bearing stage. That's what God called me to do. And the way I can help you do this is with my Revive to Thrive Way program. It's a place where you can sit with God about your books, your brand, and your entire author business. If your sales have been stuck for a while and you're tired, and I'm talking about the deep, dry bones kind of weary tired, when you're tired of trying to hear God through the noise of your metrics, this is where God's waiting to meet with you. Right now, you can get the course for $97. It's still on the launch price. It's $97 for lifetime access, plus a whole lot of bonuses. That price increases on the 1st of September to $197. So if you're at that place in your author life where you're too worn out to keep pushing and too committed to your calling to just walk away and give up, you can enroll at anointedscribe.com/revive to thrive. I'll leave the link in the show notes for you too. Friend, whatever you decide today, I want you to walk away from this episode knowing one thing for sure, and that's that God has not been silent. He's been knocking on your door. He's been giving you that door to walk through. He's been growing your roots this entire time. And you'll know this also, especially if you've already done the growth quiz, which is also, I'll also leave the link for you in the show notes. And I want to let you know that the fruit that comes from a rooted author doesn't only last a whole lot longer than the fruit that comes from shallow soil. It's also the fruit that brings you peace, freedom, and joy. Ask me how I know. Ask my students that have already been through the course. They'll tell you the same thing. They all felt relief. They all felt peace. They all got direction and vision, and they now know what to do. Friend, let today mark the last day that you struggle in your author business, that you make it all about sales and nothing about impact, that you've forgotten what it feels like to write and to do the very thing that God has called you to do. May your pen stay faithful, your roots grow deep, and every word you write bear fruit for His glory.